Okay, so welcome to AI Experts Lockdown Spotlight series. This is the second edition, and we're chatting with Tara Waters of Ashurst Digital Ventures. So really excited to have you here on the series. Please, could you just kind of give us a quick introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thank you, and really excited to join today.
Thanks.
I'm Tara. I'm a partner at Ashurst. It's a global law firm headquartered in the UK, and I'm based in the London office, which is where I'm coming to you from. I specifically head up the team that focuses on working with technology companies in earlier and growth stages, and I also head up Ashurst Advanced Digital. We've actually just rebranded Ashurst Digital Ventures to Ashurst Advanced Digital, which is the technology arm of the firm that's very focused on using technology to deliver our legal services better for our clients, and also looking at delivering digital products as well. So we've got an in-house development team that's looking at expanding the ways in which we're servicing our clients.
Great. And before we kind of get into like the technological implications of the crisis, what have been the kind of standout observations for you amidst all these drastic changes that have been going on, just in any sort of category?
I think for me, probably the most standout observation is how it's really humanized business, and really brought to light the importance of human interaction and connection, with all of us, or most of us, relegated to our homes, and to be forced to really limit the amount of interaction we're having with the outside world. I think in particular from a business perspective, it's really elevated the importance of recognizing that our businesses actually are really about the people that form them, and then the people that we work with and serve. And I think that it's been actually really humbling to see that, and it's been really nice to not think of it solely from a financial perspective, but actually how do we connect as human beings, and how that underpins everything that we're doing, and looking forward and recognizing that we're probably not going to go back to the way things were pre-COVID-19. There's probably a lot of changes that are going to take place across many industries, but that we have this common theme, which is we're all humans, we're all people, and having those connections and relationships is really what's going to drive the improvements in the future. So it's really refocusing the way we're tackling some of the problems that we've been looking at pre-pandemic.
Cool. So some kind of positive observations there, which is great. And you work with a lot of kind of fintech firms. You're heavily involved with financial services. What do you think should be the key elements of financial services firms' kind of business continuity and risk management during the crisis?
I think definitely, again, extending this theme, thinking about who they're serving, their customers, and we've, over the past kind of 10 to 20 years, we've really moved much towards this very customer-centric view that businesses need to have in order to be successful. And I think financial services firms have now actually, I think that's really been emphasized for them, because they have this arm's length relationship already with customers, and now to be so remote, where they really do need to be utilizing technology in much more different ways, at much greater scale than they're used to. So I think that there's absolutely been a transition period for financial services firms in how do they redeploy all of their offerings in a way that can reach out and still service their customers in the way that they need it, recognizing that the services they need are actually a little bit different now because of the distance between them. And also, how do they adopt more technology and really at scale? And I think the level of how quickly we needed to adjust and adapt to move to an almost 100% remote service-based industry I think, is really going to be something that's going to impact how they look at risk, how they ensure that there is business continuity. And in fact, I was speaking with one of the major UK financial services firms earlier this week, and one of the things that was really interesting that they told me was that they had some product teams that are typically focused on how do they roll out that next feature for some of their offerings. And they actually started refocusing a little bit more on what are the features that our most vulnerable customers need, because those are the customers that are in desperate need of additional services and additional offerings in order to maintain a continuity of service for them. And I thought that was really fantastic to see people, again, reframing the customer problems in this environment.
Sure. So lots of kind of considerations that have arisen since the crisis. But do you think that a global pandemic was ever a consideration? Do you think financial services were ready for this?
I definitely don't think it was a consideration. I mean, I'm sure it's something that had, obviously we've got legal clauses and lots of documents that contemplate acts of God and force majeure, but the idea that almost the entire globe would be on lockdown, because at present there is no cure, there's no sign of a cure, and we don't know how we can stop transmission of this disease. And so in order to keep us all safe, we've actually all gone on lockdown. I don't think anyone could have predicted that we would end up in this type of situation. And I certainly don't think there's any business that has anticipated these circumstances arising.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that. And you already kind of mentioned some of the things that financial services will be doing kind of in response. Do you have any recommendations for how they can manage their kind of business continuity and risk going forward? What would be your sort of key things for them to look out for?
I think probably first and foremost, they really should be looking at how they're using technology. What is their tech stack? What are the applications they're using? And probably right now, a lot of people have just sort of gap filled as quickly as possible the areas that they need to support the business. But they probably, once we come out of this, I think they'll probably need to take a step backwards and understand holistically what is the technology systems and platforms that we need to support our business at scale, assuming potentially an entirely remote service offering and entirely digital service offering. And then we'll need to actually start looking at and evaluating what are the technologies and the platforms that they should be using and what should their approach be. And we've been having a lot of different conversations with clients over the past several years as we've had digitalization occurring within many businesses. And I think a lot of businesses actually don't entirely know where to start. Some businesses take a one platform approach; they want everything in one, whereas others will look for a much more agile plug and play approach, so that they can start to leverage the newer technologies and newer solutions that come in to play. And I think that ensuring that they have those systems and processes and technologies in place to provide that end-to-end support and services will become really, really important once we come out.
Yes, it seems like technology is going to play a really key role. Just moving on now to talk about kind of regulatory compliance. As you know, a lot of banks are under pressure to disperse kind of government relief packages on a very urgent basis. At the same time, regulators are kind of expecting them to conduct due diligence to mitigate risk and so on. What do you think are the kind of critical challenges faced by the industry as a whole, and what are the challenges faced by compliance professionals in banking in particular?
Well, I think in particular that issue and that challenge is something that really reflects overall the challenges of people within the banking and financial services industry, which is the need to move quickly, to be with the times, to meet the demands of customers right now, which have evolved to instantaneous gratification, on-demand services, customization and access to information at their fingertips, on their phone, on the go, and the increasing regulatory burden that's come upon those types of businesses, and the importance of being able to still protect their customers and give them the highest level of service and the highest level of protection. And again, to echo what I've said previously, I think the use of technology and new processes in order to deliver these services becomes really critical, because we have had a great evolution in the ability to, for example, conduct KYC and AML checks using various technologies very quickly. And we also have seen some governments allowing their code to be machine readable, their laws to be machine readable, so you can understand much more quickly what are the regulatory requirements here and what can I do to satisfy them and how can I use technology to satisfy them. So I think if you start putting those two pieces together, you can empower compliance professionals to understand their obligations much more quickly and to have a solution or multiple solutions that will enable them to actually maintain that level of compliance whilst still moving as quickly as possible and being able to react to these unexpected circumstances like this pandemic.
Yeah, those are definitely sort of really important steps, I guess, firms can take to kind of mitigate those challenges. And just looking at the impact on the industry, what do you think is going to be happening kind of in the short term, and what's going to happen in the long term for banks?
Well, I think that, certainly in the short term, I think we're going to see a real shift in, that adoption of technology and much more openness to adoption of technology, which will mean that they'll have to, look inward and really understand their processes, understand their risk tolerances. There's always a lot of hesitation about new technologies because they're less proven, and the risk to reputation is very, very high when you're making technological changes that underpin the business. But ultimately, I think that's really going to be the first thing that happens, and it will be a huge driver. I think in the longer term, then, we're really going to see that mindset shift. And as I said, again, refocusing on the customer needs, the customer problems. We're going to become much more digital. We're going to potentially see cash really just completely, have our jurisdictions moving away from cash because we need to be able to operate much more digitally. So I think we're going to see some really interesting trends, and some of those have been percolating, have been popular in certain regions, but not others. And so I think hopefully what that means is there's going to be a huge amount of new innovations, new ways of looking at how to solve some of these problems, and hopefully a real evolution in the way some of these very, very institutionalized businesses operate.
Yeah, it definitely seems like there's going to be a kind of real acceleration of the underlying trends that were already there. Just in terms of the kind of lessons banks can learn from the crisis, what are going to be the key things they kind of take forward and keep in mind following the pandemic?
I think, well, hopefully it is really about how are they offering their service to their customers, and how can they react quickly and adapt to changing circumstances in order to continue to provide that really high level of service to customers. And then the other interesting thing that COVID-19 has really layered onto every type of business is thinking a lot more about physical safety and welfare. There's been a huge trend over the past few years thinking about mental safety and welfare, but now we actually have this situation where physical safety has become really important. And I think that will bring new challenges in terms of how do you conduct business. If you've got physical locations, bank branches, etc., how are you protecting the people that are coming into your physical spaces? So that's actually going to be a new area for them to need to look at and think about.
Sure, I think we're all trying to wrap our heads around what a kind of socially distanced office will look like, for example. So that's going to be an interesting challenge. We've already kind of talked about how the current situation is kind of a stimulus for digital transformation and automation. Kind of what do you think firms can do and should do during these times to not just survive, but kind of retain their competitive edge and emerge on the other side even stronger than they were, perhaps?
I think it's very much about finally and properly fully embracing digital transformation as essential to survival, but and also being able to thrive and endure and evolve. And I think hopefully any business that's had any hesitation and has thought purely from a financial perspective, what is the investment cost for me and what is my ROI or hurdle rate on the outside, hopefully we're going to see them start to factor in a lot of other softer metrics and KPIs to understand that it's not purely a financial question, because especially in times like these, you see a lot of businesses, constricting budgets, locking down extraneous spend, deciding not to move forward with those ambitious projects because they're very worried, ultimately about the core survival. And I think we need to temper some of those survival instincts with recognizing that the investment now and today is setting themselves up for longevity in the long term.
Definitely. And kind of within that journey, like as firms kind of move towards digital transformation, this is my final question. How do you see regulatory technology kind of fitting in with that process and helping firms?
I think regulatory technology has a huge role to play. And as I mentioned earlier, for example, we're seeing more governments offer machine readable code. There's been a bit of a disconnect between the law and regulation, and then the companies that are looking to utilize technology to understand, interpret, and extract that information, and then use technology to manipulate and surface that information to end users that can understand then what are my compliance requirements, what do I need to do, how do I do it, what is the guidance, and practically how does this impact me. And there's been a lot of very, very smart, fantastic regulatory technology companies that have done great things with AI and being able to work with that information. But I think hopefully we're going to see a lot more progress on both sides now. And we've already seen over the past month, governments taking emergency measures to enable digitalization of some of what they're doing, because that's simply been required in order for people to continue to function. And I think hopefully we're going to see much more collaboration between governments and regulatory technology companies so that they're working together to create harmonious systems that they can interact with each other more. And then I think from a financial institution and even end user, consumer user perspective, to have access to technology that can do all of those things, that can have that direct plug-in to the law, to the regulation, and then provide the interpretation and the information and the practical steps and guidance will be hugely beneficial. All of the clients I talk to are clamoring for a technology that can do that. And so I think this is the space where we're going to see a lot of really interesting innovation that has real practical and effects ultimately for consumers and individuals.
Sure. Well, that's it for the interview. So thanks so much, Tara. You made some really good points, really kind of talking about the role technology is playing and will play in terms of financial services, business continuity and risk management, how it's going to help banks kind of maintain regulatory compliance, and just how it can help firms in general kind of survive and emerge on the other side of the pandemic kind of stronger than ever. So it's been really good to talk to you, and your insights have been really appreciated. So I wish you the best, and thanks a lot for speaking to us.
Thanks very much. Happy to.
Thank you, Tara.